Chapter 6. No Farewells. By dusk, Orren had learned that possibility could sour in a man's pocket. The sealed paper from Ankistro lay against his chest all day, warm first from his body and then damp from the rain that had found its way under his cloak. He had touched it too often. Every time his fingers found the wax through the cloth, he thought of Camarath, brass towers he had never seen, warm courtyards he had invented out of songs, tables with bowls filled past reason, a court where no one would ask whether he could mend a net before deciding if he deserved supper. Then he thought of Evara in the lower field, not saying yes, not saying no cleanly either. That was worse. A clean no could be mourned. A half-open answer lived under the ribs and kept moving. By the time he reached the low beam, the rain had thickened into a grey curtain. The tavern's windows glowed weakly through it, oiled cloth shining like tired eyes. Inside, the room was louder than the weather and less warm than it pretended. Men had gathered because rain made private roofs honest. Everyone knew whose leaked. Everyone knew whose chimney smoked wrong. Everyone came to Mara's when they could not bear hearing water find its own way into the house. Orren paused outside the door. He should go to Evara. He had told himself that all the way from the field, through the ridge path, past the chapel stone, past the harbour road where the masts of the unfinished oath stood black and patient against the fog, he should go back and ask again. Not sing, not persuade. Ask. Listen. Wait. But her father would be home now. The thought stood between his hand and the latch. Orren had been called foolish by enough people to know the word had uses. Walking into that house, after what he had asked in the field, would not be courage. It would be dropping a lit coal into straw and congratulating himself for bringing light. So he opened the tavern door instead. The low beam looked up. For half a breath, he felt what he usually felt, the little lift of being recognized. Torv by the hearth raised two wrapped fingers. Mara turned from the pot. A girl mending a sleeve near the back smiled before she remembered she was supposed to be too tired. Then they saw his face, and the welcome dimmed. Mara's eyes went to his chest, where the paper lay hidden. She missed very little for a woman who pretended to see only cups. She said no, Mara said. Orren shut the door behind him. Good evening to you as well. Did she? The room had gone quieter in pieces, not silent. Skeldrun people did not give silence away for free, but spoons slowed. Dice stopped in a man's palm. Rain took up the space. Orren unfastened his cloak. She said many things. That means yes only to singers and debt men. She did not say no. Mara's face softened in exactly the way he did not want. Oh, Orren. He hated his name in her mouth when it sounded like that. I need a drink, he said. You need sense. Can you pour it? No. Then ale. She gave him ale, because love and anger had always shared hands with her. The cup was chipped at the rim. He drank from the unbroken side and tasted water first, then sour grain, then the ghost of what ale might have been if the year had loved anyone. Where is he? He asked. Mara did not pretend not to understand. Back corner, of course. Ankistro sat in the same dark place as the night before, but the darkness served him differently now. Last night he had seemed to let the room do work for him. Tonight he seemed to be waiting for something the room had not yet decided to become. 3 of his sailors sat nearby, not speaking. One was carving a strip of wood with a small knife, shaving it thinner and thinner without looking down. Another had his boots off and was warming his feet by the hearth, despite Mara's glare. The third slept with his head on his folded arms, and one hand still wrapped around his cup. Ankistro watched Orren over a clean glass of something clear. Not ale, not wine. Something that looked like water, and surely was not. His gloved hand rested in his lap. Orren walked to him. The room tried not to follow. Failed. Ankistro smiled. My boy, You look like a man who has discovered that love has logistics. Orren sat opposite him. Do you rehearse cruelty, or does it come easily? I rehearse kindness. Cruelty has always been more punctual. I am not in the mood, clearly. You have come to a tavern and refused to perform. Half the room will think the famine has worsened. Orren drank. The ale did nothing useful. Ankistro tilted his head. She did not come. No, will she? Orren set the cup down too hard. Ale jumped over the rim and ran along the table's scarred grain. You always move so quickly to the bruise. I prefer not to waste time admiring healthy skin. You should put that in a court letter. I have. Twice. Orren laughed, despite himself. It lasted half a breath and left him worse. Ankistro watched him more closely after that. Ah, the captain said. Do not. I have said nothing. You were going to say as if I am a child with a cracked toy. No. A cracked toy is a simpler matter. One can see where the break is. Orren looked toward the tavern door. Rain ran down the outside in crooked threads. Every time it opened, cold came in. Every time it closed, some part of him waited for Evara to be on the threshold, pale hair damp against her cheek, mouth flat with irritation because he had made her walk through weather for his foolishness. The door did not open. Have you ever been in love? Orren asked. Ankistro's smile stayed. The man behind it went very still. The sailor by the hearth stopped rubbing his foot. Orren noticed. So did Ankistro. With one small motion of his bare hand, the captain sent the sailor back to his own business. The knife resumed its shaving. The foot went back toward the fire. The sleeping man snored too loudly to be believed. That is a reckless question, Ankistro said. It is raining. Recklessness is all the weather left me. And what answer do you hope to purchase with it? I have no coin. No one pays for dangerous answers with coin. Orren leaned forward. Have you? Ankistro lifted his glass. The clear drink caught the firelight and broke it into a thin line along the rim. My boy, he said, no one goes to sea unless he is chasing a thing or fleeing one. That is not an answer. It is the only honest kind. Orren looked at the gloved hand. Ankistro did not move it. Did she come with you? Orren asked. The question was out before he knew he meant it. Ankistro's eyes changed. Only slightly. Only enough to make Orren wish he had never found the place, under the polished surface. No, Ankistro said. Orren waited. For once, the captain did not fill the space. Rain struck the roof. Somewhere behind the counter, Mara stirred the pot with too much force. The ladle scraped bottom. Nothing good ever came of scraping bottom. Orren turned his cup slowly. Then how did you leave? Ankistro's mouth curved, but it was not quite a smile now. Badly. That one word did more than a story would have. Orren sat back. He could have stopped there. Should have. But grief made a man greedy. He wanted a shape for his own misery, and would take it from another if the table offered. Does it get easier? No. Orren looked up. Ankistro shrugged. It becomes better dressed. The laugh came out of Orren as a breath, not humor, recognition perhaps. She wants to go, he said. Ankistro waited. She does, Orren said, because the room in his head required witness. She said so. That seems promising. She said she does not trust wanting. Also promising. Trusting desire has led to most of the world's uglier architecture. She has her father, an unfortunate condition in many lives. You make everything small when you want not to feel it. Ankistro's eyes sharpened. Careful. Orren should have heeded that. He did not. He would rather bury her in that field than let her step onto a ship, Orren said. The words came too hot, too loud. A man at the nearest table glanced over then found urgent interest in his cup. Ankistro's face did not change. That was the trouble with him. His stillness never meant absence. It meant something had gone inward to choose its knife. Would he? Ankistro asked. Yes. Men say many things when frightened. He doesn't say. He does. Ankistro looked toward the door. Rain shivered against it, and she stays. She thinks staying makes her good. Perhaps it does. Orren stared at him. Ankistro's tone stayed mild. Do not look so injured. Goodness has killed more women than wickedness. Wickedness is at least generally recognized as danger. Orren rubbed both hands over his face. I should not have come here. No? No. Where should you have gone? He had no answer that did not begin with Evara and end at her father's door. Ankistro leaned closer by a fraction. Did you ask properly? I tried. That is often what men say when they mean no. Orren's temper flared. I did not sing at her. A pause. Too small for anyone else to notice. Ankistro noticed. Interesting defense, he said. Orren stood so quickly the bench scraped. Several faces turned. Mara's hand went under the counter again. Ankistro did not move. You know nothing of it, Orren said. I know enough to ask why you named the weapon before anyone accused you of drawing it. The word struck. Weapon. Orren's throat closed. He saw Evara in the field, her hand over his, teaching him to twist the stalk. He saw her face when he had nearly put a thread of sound into the air between them at the low beam. Her fingers tightening on the basket handle. Her soft, dreadful, I know. He had not sung, but he had wanted to. That should have comforted him less than it did. He sat down again. Forgive me, Ankistro said. Orren gave a bitter little laugh. Do you mean that? Not entirely. But the shape was correct. I love her. I have not doubted it. Everyone speaks as if that is the danger. Ankistro's gaze settled on him with unnerving steadiness. Sometimes love is only a fire. It warms what it can reach and leaves the rest of the house to freeze. Sometimes it becomes offended by every wall that refuses to burn. Orren looked away. That is a court line, he said. That is a scar speaking in court clothes. I am not him. Her father? Yes. No, Ankistro said. You are prettier and less honest. Orren looked back sharply. The captain lifted his glass. Do not worry. Most of us are less honest than the worst men we know. That is how we keep from recognizing kinship. Kinship. The word made something in Orren recoil. I would not hurt her. I believe you. Then stop speaking as if I would. I said, I believed you. Ankistro drank. Men hurt women every day while believing themselves. Orren pushed the cup away. The ale had gone uselessly warm. What do you want from me? He asked. Ankistro's smile returned, faint and practiced. There he is. The man with practical questions. I am not going to Camarath without her. Are you not? No. Then I want you to sleep badly. Wake before dawn, and decide whether you are a liar. Orren said nothing. Ankistro reached into his coat and took out the small leather purse from the night before. He set it on the table. Orren stared at it. I already said no. You said not until you asked her. You have asked. She has not answered. Then buy provisions for 2 possible answers. I cannot. You can. The motions remain simple. Orren's hand curled on the tabletop. Bread, boots, a cloak, salve for Evara's cracked hands. Something for her father, too, perhaps, because guilt made even kindness ugly and complicated. A pouch of salt to set on the sewn table like proof that leaving did not have to mean abandonment. And if her father saw it? He pictured the man's hand closing around Evara's wrist. No, he did not take the purse. Ankistro watched his refusal, then tied the purse back shut. Principled. he said. Afraid? Better. Fear has saved more lives than principle. The captain stood. The sailors nearest him straightened, but he made a small dismissive motion. They settled again, though one kept his eyes on Orren. Ankistro adjusted his cuff. His gloved hand flexed once, the fingers wrong beneath the leather. Not fingers. Not all of them. Orren saw. The captain saw him see. Where are you going? Orren asked. To see whether the channel has manners. In this rain? I have had worse conversations with weather. Orren stood too. Ankistro. The captain paused. Do not go to her house, Orren wanted to say. Absurd. Why would he? Evara's father was nothing to him. A local brute in a leaking house. A man with a belt and a daughter whose refusal had put grief on Orren's face. The captain had ships, crew, gold, court papers, old scars, and more dangerous things than one Skeldrun farmer to consider. Still, Orren said, I did not ask you to fix anything. Ankistro's expression became unreadable. No, he said softly. You asked whether love survives distance. That is not what I meant. It rarely is. Ankistro. The name stopped him again. For the first time, Orren heard how close it came to a plea. The captain's eyes moved over his face. Not kindly, not cruelly, measuring the wound, deciding what could be done with the shape of it. Sleep, my boy, Ankistro said. Morning makes cowards and saints of us all, and neither state should be entered tired. Then he left. No sailors followed him. Orren watched the door close. Cold stayed in the room after. Mara came to the table with a rag. She wiped the spilled ale, though it had nearly dried. You talk too much when you're hurt, she said. Orren sank back onto the bench. I am a singer. That is what I said. He looked at the door. He won't. Mara stopped wiping. Orren did not finish. What did you ask him? She said. Nothing. Her eyes held his. That is not what I asked. He stood again. Too fast. I need air. Air is wet tonight. So am I, Orren. He did not turn. Mara's voice changed. It became smaller and older, which was rare for her, and therefore difficult to bear. Do not let wanting make you stupid. He almost smiled. Too late. That was not permission, but he was already moving. Outside, the rain struck hard enough to turn the lane white. Orren pulled his hood up and stood beneath the eave for a moment, though the eave leaked as badly as everything else in Skeldrun. The harbour bell sounded once through the weather. Far off, a dog barked. Then nothing. He should go after Ankistro. He should go to Evara's house. He should go anywhere but the little room by the net sheds where the roof dipped low, and the floor smelled of old rope, and every object he owned could fit into one sack if he left the broken things behind. Instead, he walked there. Each step made sense only after he had taken it. His room waited behind a driftwood door that scraped the dirt when he pulled it open. Inside, darkness held the shape of his few possessions. A pallet, a three-legged stool, a peg with one spare sock hanging from it because the other had been used to patch a sleeve, the cracked six-string lying on a shelf, like a bird with its wing broken wrong. He lit the lamp. The flame took reluctantly. Rain tapped through one corner of the roof into a pan he had placed days ago, and not emptied because the sound had become company. He took the sealed paper from his vest and set it on the stool. The wax mark looked darker in the lamp glow. A road bent through a circle, or a hook through a moon, or nothing at all if a man stopped trying to make signs of wax. He took down the six-string. The missing string left a silence. His fingers knew better than his ears. He plucked one of the remaining strings. It gave a dull, unhappy note. Fair, he said to it. The room did not lean. It never did when he sang alone. That was one of the things he did not tell people. A room without listeners was only a room. His voice could fill it, but there was nothing for it to catch on. No breath to shape. No hunger to warm. No eye to turn, he hummed anyway. Not for a song, for a person who was not there. Evara's name almost formed under the sound, and he stopped. He remembered her in the field. Do not make my name into a song. The rain filled the quiet. He packed, because not packing would be a lie too theatrical to respect. There was little enough to choose from. A second shirt with a tear at the shoulder. His small knife, the broken six-string. After a pause, 3 pages of songs folded and refolded, until the creases were soft as cloth. The sealed paper, a piece of charcoal wrapped in rag. One wooden button Evara had once found and told him matched nothing he owned, which was true, and had not stopped him keeping it. He left the sock on the peg. A man had to leave something. The thought was foolish enough to hurt. He lay down without taking off his wet clothes. Sleep came in fits and wrong turns. In one dream, he stood on a court floor in Camarath, and everyone clapped with Evara's hands. In another, her father sat at the low beam and ate the sealed paper piece by piece while Ankistro stirred the stewpot. In another, the harbour bell rang and rang, but no one could find the ship. He woke before dawn to a sound at the door. Not a knock, a hand failing against wood. Orren sat up so quickly, his skull struck the low shelf. Damn! The sound came again, softer. A scrape, then wait. He crossed the room in 2 steps and dragged the door open. Rain filled the doorway. Evara stood inside it. For a moment his mind would not put her together. Hair plastered to her face, no cloak. Dress burned at the hem. One sleeve soaked dark from shoulder to wrist. Mud up to her knees, soot across her cheek. Blood at her hairline, diluted by rain into thin red lines that ran down her neck. One hand held against her stomach, fingers curled wrong. Her eyes fixed on him without seeming to see. The relief hit first. She came. The thought lit inside him, shameful and bright. Then he saw the burn on her hand. Evara. Her face crumpled. He caught her before she fell. She was colder than the rain. Her whole body shook, but no sound came out. Orren pulled her inside and kicked the door shut. It scraped back open an inch. He left it. Both arms went around her, because he did not know where she was hurt, and every place seemed hurt. She gripped his shirt with her unburned hand. No, not gripped. Hung from it. He lowered them both to the floor because her knees had gone. What happened? He asked. Her mouth moved against his chest. He bent closer. Evara? The house. The words barely existed. He looked toward the door, as if the house might be behind her, as if all Skeldrun could fit in his room if she spoke it. What happened to the house? Her fingers tightened in his shirt. There is no house. Orren went still. Rain tapped into the pan. The lamp had nearly burned out. Dawn pressed grey at the seams of the door. Your father? She made a sound. Not a sob, not a word. Something that had tried to be both and failed at living. Orren closed his eyes. A house burning, a father inside, a girl at his door with blood and soot on her face. Ankistro leaving the tavern. No, that was too quick. Too ugly. The mind made patterns when frightened. Rain, a captain, a broken door. The world did not have to be as cruel as the shape he saw inside it. Who did this? He whispered. Evara pulled back enough to look at him. Her eyes searched his face, and that frightened him more than any answer. A man? She said. Orren's throat closed. What man? I don't know. Evara. I don't know. Her voice sharpened, then broke. The door broke. He was there. He. She stopped. Her breath came too fast. Orren put both hands to her face before thinking better of it. She flinched. He dropped them at once. I'm sorry. No. She shook her head. No, I can't. It's all right. It isn't. I know. You don't. The words struck and passed through him. There was no room in her for softening. And he deserved none anyway. She looked around his room as if only just discovering where she was. Her eyes caught on the packed sack, the sealed paper tucked beneath its flap, the broken six-string beside it. Something in her face emptied. You packed. Orren looked at the sack. It seemed obscene now. The spare shirt, the songs, the button, his little chosen losses tied neatly in cloth, while her whole life had burned faster than Rain could answer. I didn't know, he said. No, I know what you mean. He hated those words now. He reached for his cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders. She let him, but only because her hands were shaking too hard to stop him. The cloak swallowed her. She seemed smaller in it, and he hated that too. We should go to Mara, he said. Your hand. No. She can clean it. No. Evara, you're hurt. Her eyes lifted to his. The ship leaves. The room went quiet around the sentence. Orren heard the harbour bell in memory. Morning tide. The channel opening. Ankistro waiting, or not waiting. Camarath, the unfinished oath. The life he had asked her toward, and the one that had been taken from behind her. We don't have to, he said. It came too fast. He knew it, and so did she. Her mouth twisted. Not quite anger, not quite grief. Don't lie kindly. I'm not. You are always singing somewhere. He looked down. Her burned hand had begun to swell. A strip of skin near the thumb was blistered white. There was blood under her nails. Not all hers, maybe. The thought made his stomach turn. We can stay, he said. Where? He had no answer. She looked toward the door. Rain showed in the gap where the wood did not meet the frame. I didn't pack. The words broke something in him. Not because they were tragic, because they were practical. Evara, standing in the ashes of her life, still knew what leaving required. We need nothing, he said. Her eyes closed. You always say that when you mean you don't know what we need. He almost laughed. It came out as a breath that shook. She was still herself, burned, bloodied, hollowed by whatever had happened in the rain, and still she found the exact place to set the knife. You're right, he said. That seemed to frighten her. He stood, because movement was easier than kneeling inside the truth. He tore a strip from his spare shirt and brought the water pan from beneath the leak. The water was cold and dusty from the roof, but it was water. Evara held still while he wrapped her burned hand loosely. Too loosely, perhaps. He did not know burns. He knew applause, breath, the way a note could pull men back from the edge of despair if the room was willing. He did not know how to wrap a hand that had tried to hold spring and found fire. Too tight? He asked. No, that means yes sometimes. That was no. He tied it. Her face had gone grey. He packed the spare shirt anyway, then unpacked it and wrapped it around her shoulders beneath the cloak, then took it back because the cloth was wet from his own hands and useless. He made a mess of everything he touched. Evara watched him. At last she said, Orren. He stopped. We should go before I think. He looked at her. She was not choosing him. Not cleanly. Not the way his songs wanted. Not the way his hunger had imagined. She was choosing the only road left that was not ash and questions. The knowledge should have made him release her. Instead, he nodded. All right. He lifted the sack. It weighed almost nothing. Evara tried to stand. Her knees failed halfway. He caught her by the elbow, carefully this time, and waited until she found her feet. For one moment they stood close in the weak grey light, neither moving. He wanted to kiss her. He did not. That restraint felt so small beside everything else that it nearly shamed him. They stepped into the rain. Skeldrun had not woken properly. Or perhaps it had never slept. At this hour, the village belonged to people who had no luxury of mourning. Fishermen checking lines by touch, women emptying roof pots into the lane, a boy carrying 2 buckets too large for him, old Rusk scraping scales from a fish so thin it bent around the knife. No one called to Orren. A few looked, then looked away. Evara kept the hood low. His cloak hid most of the soot. Not all. One woman on the lower road saw the blood at Evara's neck and opened her mouth. Evara looked at her. The woman closed it. They passed the low beam. Light showed under the door. Mara would be awake, making thin porridge, cursing damp wood, counting cups, knowing already that some disaster had happened somewhere because Mara knew the shape of weather inside people. Orren slowed. Evara did not. No farewells? He asked softly. She kept walking. To whom? He looked at the tavern door. Mara was not his mother. She had fed him. That was not the same thing, except when it was. He kept walking. The harbour road sloped down through mud and stone. The rain turned the world colourless. Nets hung from poles like drowned curtains. The air smelled of salt, smoke, wet rope, and something bitter carried from the ridge behind them. Orren looked back once. Not far enough to see the Soln house. Only the road. The fog. The faintest smear of darker smoke beyond the rise. Quickly torn apart by rain. Evara did not look. That seemed worse. The unfinished oath waited at the 3rd pier. In daylight, if the grey before dawn could be called daylight, she was uglier than Orren had expected. Not broken, not neglected. Ugly in the way of things built to survive, by making no promises. Her hull was dark, tarred over old scars. The name had been painted in pale letters near the bow, each stroke clean enough to suggest someone had cared, and old enough to suggest caring had not helped. Crew moved over her deck with quick, quiet purpose. They carried crates. Coiled lines broke ice from the rail with mallets. One man laughed at something, but the laugh died when Ankistro turned his head. The captain stood at the gangplank. Dry. That was the first impossible thing. Not fully dry. Rain clung to the brim of his hat and darkened his coat at the shoulders, but he looked composed in a way no man should after a night like this. His boots were clean of village mud. His gloved hand rested beneath his coat. His bare hand held a folded strip of paper he was not reading. His eyes went first to Orren, then to Evara. Not surprise, not guilt, something quieter. That was the second impossible thing. Captain, Orren said. His voice sounded wrong in his own ears. Ankistro inclined his head. The channel has decided to be negotiable. Evara stood beside Orren without leaning on him now. The effort cost her. He could feel it in the space between their bodies. Ankistro turned to her. Mistress Soln, he said, bowing as if she had arrived at a court, and not a dock in ruined clothes beneath another man's cloak. I am sorry for the weather. Ivara's breath caught. So small Orren might have missed it if every part of him had not been listening for her. He looked at her. She stared at Ankistro's gloved hand. The rain ran down her face. Or perhaps not all of it was rain. Do you know him? Orren asked. Evara did not answer quickly enough. Ankistro did. We met briefly at the tavern, he said. Though I doubt I merited memory. Evara's eyes lifted to his face. For a moment, the dock, the rain, the ship, all held still. Then a sailor dropped a coil of rope. The sound broke the air. Evara looked away. I remember voices poorly in rain. Ankistro accepted the lie with perfect courtesy. Then we will hope for clear weather. Orren hated him suddenly, not because he knew. He did not know, not fully, but because Ankistro stood there with his fine coat and his gloved hand and his careful voice, and Evara looked like a house after the roof had gone in. We need a room, Orren said. You have one. She needs a healer. At sea, we call that whoever has the cleanest knife and the steadiest stomach. Orren stepped toward him. Ankistro's gaze moved to him, calm, almost bored. Then Evara's hand closed around Orren's sleeve. not pulling, stopping. I need to sit, she said. The anger went out of Orren at once, leaving shame behind. Ankistro glanced up. Same. A broad man near the rail turned. He had a round face, a red nose, and eyes that took in Evara's condition without lingering where pity would be visible. Blankets, Ankistro said. Hot water, if the galley has remembered civilization. And tell Ven no jokes near the passengers unless he wants his tongue reassigned. Syme nodded and vanished below. Evara's hand stayed on Orren's sleeve. Ankistro stepped aside from the gangplank. We sail within the quarter hour. Orren looked back toward Skeldrun. The village sat hunched under rain. Smoke bent low from a few chimneys. The low beam's door opened at last, and Mara stepped out with a bucket in hand. She was too far to see them clearly. Or maybe not. Mara stopped. Orren could not see her face. He lifted one hand. She did not wave. After a moment she set down the bucket and put both hands on her hips. Even from the dock, he knew the shape of the scolding. It almost undid him. Evara saw where he looked. Go say goodbye. The words were flat, but not unkind. The gangplank creaked under a sailor's boots. The harbour bell began to ring, slow and dull, once, twice. Morning tide. Mara still stood in the rain. Orren imagined crossing back. Mara would touch his face again, perhaps, or slap him, or hand him bread, or all three, in an order she deemed educational. He imagined telling her Evara was hurt, and watching Mara become sharp with purpose. He imagined men turning to look, questions opening, Evara standing alone on the dock under his cloak, while the ship waited and Ankistro watched the tide. He imagined the tide leaving. He imagined Evara's father's house, smoking behind the ridge. He imagined staying. Then he hated himself for imagining anything, as if life were still choosing among songs. There isn't time, he said. Evara's face did not change. That was how he knew she had heard the cowardice inside the truth. He took the sack in one hand and offered her the other. She looked at it. For a moment he thought she would refuse. Then she placed her unburned hand in his. Her fingers were cold, slick with rain, and alive. He held too tightly at first. She made no sound, but her hand stiffened. He loosened his grip at once. Sorry, he whispered. I know. There it was again. But this time it did not cut as deeply. This time it meant she had heard the apology. They crossed the gangplank. The deck shifted under Orren's feet. Not much. Enough to tell his body that the world had become unreliable. Evara's grip tightened, then loosened as if she resented needing the balance. Syme appeared with a blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders without speaking. That kindness, wordless and practical, seemed to startle her more than Ankistro's bow. Orren turned once more. The dock had already begun to move away, though the lines were not yet cast. Oh, foolish. The ship had shifted, not the dock. Still, Skeldrun looked less attached to him than it had a moment before. Mara remained outside the low beam. Torv had come to stand beside her, cup in hand, despite the rain. The harbour bell rang again. Ankistro gave an order, not shouted, given. Men moved. Lines fell. Wood groaned. Somewhere below, the ship's belly answered the sea. The unfinished oath pulled from the pier with a slow, resistant sound, as if Skeldrun mud had reached up from the harbour floor to hold her back, and failed. Evara stood beside Orren at the rail. She did not look toward the ridge. She looked at the water. Orren wanted to say something, anything, that they would be safe, that Camarath would be warm, that he would send coin, that Mara would forgive him, that her father... No song belonged there. So he said nothing. For a while the only sound between them was rain striking the deck and the low creak of rope. Then Evara spoke without turning. I left the seed. Orren looked at her. Her face was grey in the dawn, eyes fixed on the harbour water. The bandage on her hand had already soaked through in one place. She looked smaller than grief, and stronger than the ship beneath them. "What seed?" he asked softly. She closed her eyes. "Spring," she said. Orren had no answer. The ship moved into the grey channel. Behind them, Skeldrun blurred in rain until the village became only roofs, smoke, hunger, and the shape of a life neither of them had properly left. At the rail, Evara's hand rested near his, not touching. Orren kept his own hand still, and told himself that was kindness. Above them, Ankistro's voice cut cleanly through rain and sail. "South," he called. The unfinished oath obeyed.
Rain on the sill, salt in the flame. When the door goes quiet and the room lets go, lay the last word gently where the dark runs slow.
There is still a road under ash, under rain. There is still a voice trying not to break. Carry the song through the dark and the foam. Carry the name when the cold calls home. Leave one small light where the lost can remain. I will find you by listening. You will know me by name.
Rain on the sill,
Salt in the flame. The door goes quiet. Carry